I recently encountered a compelling objection that questions the apparent absence of God during pivotal moments in human history, especially in modern times. The critique went something like this. Of course, God supposedly intervenes in ancient stories like the Tower of Babel incident, but not today with all of our technology. We've literally ascended into space, and God is nowhere to be found. This raised an intriguing point, though it was probably not asked in good faith. Why stop man's ambition in the age of myths and legends, but not intervene in the age of information, where things are verifiable, where man actually did go up above all the earth? Why stay silent in such a cosmic spectacle? As I pondered this, I analyzed the Tower of Babel story and compared it to the first successful human journey into space in 1961. What I found were two events that are the same in principle, but distinct in motivation, in a way that actually vindicates how God's presence is seen historically in both events, without contradiction. Let's first quickly revisit the Tower of Babel story. In Genesis chapter 11, we find humanity, united by a single language, coming together with a singular purpose, to build a name and a tower so high and majestic that it should both reach the very heavens and defy the realm of the divine. The principle being taught is simple, whether you're a believer or not. Man's ambition to ascend to God's realm or to defy him through man-made ascension is ultimately futile. The Tower of Babel represents the human attempt to achieve God-likeness through sheer willpower, ignoring God's agency and rule. This is the same principal lie Adam and Eve fell for in the garden. The serpent says, "You won't really die from eating the forbidden fruit. Rather, God knows that when you do, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God." So the principle is identical, whether in the garden or at the tower. Man desires God-likeness without God, the natural consequence being confusion and dispersion. If you take this story and apply its underlying teaching, then we also have precedence for God manually interrupting a human attempt at ascension. If he did it once, he can do it again. So let's return to the original critique with that in mind. If God did step into history at Babel in a palpable way, where was he when humans actually ascended to space? Why didn't he stop them then? Let's follow that thread with our second example. The first human to enter space was Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut who made the historic ascent on April 12, 1961. In just under 2 hours, Gagarin completed a full orbit of the Earth, traveling up to 17,000 miles per hour. This is an extraordinary achievement, certainly more majestic than Babel was, and a true testament to human excellence and technological advancement. Gagarin reached about 200 miles above Earth, which makes the question even more pressing. If God intervened in the construction of a tower far smaller and closer to the Earth's surface, why did he not intervene when man actually ascended way past this into space? Why didn't he stop it? To answer that, we must return to the intent behind the Tower of Babel and the space race. While Babel represented human pride and defiance, I would argue that the achievement of 1961 did not, even though the accomplishment was global. The key difference lies in the disposition of man's ambitions in ascension, with God versus without God. To clarify, you may wonder what the atheistic Soviet Union has to do with cooperating with the agency of God in order to transcend the Earth. Well, as it turns out, Yuri Gagarin, as the first man to enter space, was a Russian Orthodox Christian, a sharp minority faith in the 1960s Soviet Union. Under the leadership of Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviets had escalated efforts to suppress religion of all kinds, particularly the Russian Orthodox Church, which had historically been a significant part of Russian culture and values. The Soviet government viewed Christianity in particular as a remnant of the old feudal society and a barrier to the spread of Marxist or Leninist ideology. Religious institutions were heavily controlled by the state, many churches were closed, religious leaders were persecuted, and public practice was discouraged. With that in mind, considering the backdrop of the times, Yuri Gagarin's ascent into space upon the Vostok 1 was accompanied by a surprising nod to the divine instead of an arrogant opposition, even when his culture wanted otherwise. Upon the manned spacecraft, Gagarin had brought a personal icon of the Virgin Mary holding an infant Jesus Christ in her arms. This is a common icon in the ancient church. Mary is called the Theotokos, a Greek term meaning God-bearer or Mother of God. And while the icon is simply wood and paint in its properties, what it represents and points to is the prototype, or ultimate reality. So, in a way, we can see man's ascent into the cosmos as something not diametrically opposed to God or even without him, but through the depiction of Christ aboard the Vostok 1 spacecraft, man's first journey into the cosmos was in cooperation with, and even christened by, the Lord of Heaven and Earth. In this way, we can typologically compare the Tower of Babel story and the great space race of the 1960s as it concerns man's ambition to ascension. Rather than the rebellious or self-assertive attitude that the builders of Babel had, the key difference here is that Gagarin, through his faith and personal reverence, represents an ascent that is accompanied by a sense of acknowledgement of divine presence, pointing towards human humility, not hubris, as the ultimate substance by which human beings truly ascend to be where God allegorically is. Thus, God's silence in the modern age does not indicate a contradiction to his intervention at Babel, but rather reflects the disposition of human ambition, whether it is humble and cooperative with God, or proud and self-reliant. So that's why God didn't intervene when man found his place among the cosmos. He was there with them,